All right. Well, hello, guys. Welcome to the April Men's Ministry Roundtable. Today, we are talking about spiritual fathering, fathers to the fatherless. What does it look like to cultivate and connect spiritual fathers with young men? And on the call, we've got men's ministry leaders who are serving men in a variety of really cool and exciting ways, literally all over the country, from and North America, from Canada to New York to Washington to South Carolina, Texas, and in between. So we're glad to have each of you guys on this Zoom call. And I just wanted to open up with this passage of scripture many of you may be familiar with, but Paul says in 1 Corinthians 4:14 through 17, he says, I do not write these things to you to make you ashamed, but to admonish you as my beloved children. For though you have countless guides in Christ, you do not have many fathers. For I became your father in Christ Jesus through the gospel. I urge you then, be imitators of me. That is why I sent you, Timothy, my beloved and faithful child in the Lord, to remind you of my ways in Christ as I teach them everywhere in the church. And so, this idea of spiritual fathering that we're talking about today, it is a biblical idea. It was modeled, of course, with Christ and his disciples, but also with Paul and Timothy and the many other men that Paul was able to mentor over the years. And so, we want to just begin with a foundational premise that we think it's really important for every man to have a spiritual father and for every man to ultimately be able to become a spiritual father for other young men. And I think there's pretty overwhelming statistics that young men are looking for this and old men want to give this, but somehow there's a major breakdown in the delivering on those two desires because, at least according to one study that I found, only 12% of men, Christian men under the age of 40, have ever had a spiritual father in their lives. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I want to open it up for you guys, but I thought I'd begin by just kind of asking, how many of you have either had a spiritual father in your life or you've had a spiritual son in your life? And maybe what does that look like? Just to kind of give some context for what spiritual fathering might look like, either for you as a recipient or as someone that's been able to give it to other men.
I think I'll go ahead and jump in there. Since I work with young adults, um, there's a tendency for guys, we want to solve problems. We like to fix things. That just seems to be a lot of times our MO. What I've seen with the young adults, they generally don't need to be told what to do more. They need to be challenged to think for themselves. And I've seen so many other leaders come in and go, well, this is what you need to do. And don't listen to the person, don't listen to that young man and find out where they're at and where they have questions. Um, it seems to be more productive to kind of create a big sandbox, so to
Mm.
speak, where they can get in there and they can break stuff,
Mm.
throw stuff around, get dirty, try new things. Unconditional positive regard. That's the big, psychology phrase there. I'm going to love you. That's God. I'm going to love you no matter what.
Mm.
Go try something. It worked. It didn't work. How did that work for you? Instead of me solving the problem for you, you got to figure it out. Otherwise, really didn't learn anything. Somebody just told you how to do it. So how do we create opportunities for them to try new stuff and know that they're going to be supported?
I like that sandbox idea, and I think you're right. Guys don't want to be micromanaged, but they want someone to be that guide that can kind of give them the freedom and the empowerment to try those things out. Who else? What does it look like for you?
I think for the recipient, and when I'm looking back on my years where I had a spiritual father, was just the trust that I had with him to come to him with
Mhm.
just any kind of question that I had. And so on the flip side, for me, then it's how do I continue to build rapport and trust with the men that maybe spiritual fathering also to help them go like, hey, you can ask anything you want. I'm not gonna demean you because I know these guys are just trying to figure things out.
Mhm.
Because sometimes no one's ever told them you know what it looks like to lead your family. So yeah, so whatever I can do to try and create that trust, which is sometimes a lot of open-ended questions, a lot of um, just you know not jumping on anything they may have said that's wrong, just to go and knowing that like, hey, I got time with this guy to work on these things without going like, yeah, you're just wrong here, because that won't be that you can't say that until later on when the
Mhm.
trust has already been built, right?
Yeah.
I think just we know the crazy stats about fatherlessness and what it leads to, and how it's kind of the enemy's sneaky tactic of everything: prison, imprisonment, unplanned pregnancies, drug abuse, addiction, and it stems back to fatherlessness. And I look at my area as Bible Belt, predominantly affluential, predominantly white America, and 45% of the homes in my area don't have a father. They don't have a father.
Mm.
And you go into Houston, you go just 30 minutes down the road, and it's 1% don't have, 1% have a father. So we're up against a big.
Wow.
Um, my thing with older kids, teenagers, I open my house up and invite the kids over with good food and a fire. And I just include that kid as almost like he's just part of our family. If it's we pick up this one kid, we just pick him up and take him fishing. I drop him off at the trailer home, and my kids don't know. My 12-year-old goes, "Wow, Dad, I really love his home," and it just shows you the perspective. I mean, it is a literal trailer park. And
Mhm.
so it goes to show you that, like Gary said, building that trust. Eric as well alluded to that as well. How do we build that trust to be an open book to these guys and not make it awkward where I'm going to mentor you or disciple you? Just make them part of your family. Feed them steak, feed them good, and before you know it, when you go around the fire and ask a question, that fatherhood thing will most likely come up at some point. So that's it. That's at least what I've seen in my instance with older kids.
Yeah, that's a great insight. Like you're a dad of younger boys, or adolescent boys, um, and thinking beyond just like what do my sons need right now, but like, are there, a couple of their friends that I could invest in? I think there are a lot of men that probably would really benefit from just hearing you share that and adopting that mindset with their own sons and their friends as well.
And we have the conversations with our kids subtle. We don't, it's one of those, it's not a strategic. It's like, hey, let's invite him over. And it just so naturally happens. It's not like I'm gonna be your spiritual father. Like it's
Right.
not just draw the line in the sand. Just we just do things together, and that conversations stem from that.
Yeah. Scott, how about you? What is you've been thinking and working on this idea? What does that look like for you?
In a big word, I've connected this, that passage that you read in 1 Corinthians 4 and what Paul says other places, just about imitate me as I imitate Christ. And so me, I mean, probably being younger than a lot of you guys on this call, and when I was even younger, looking for older men who I could imitate, and then also being somebody that people younger than me can look at and say, I want to be like that. I want to raise my kids like that guy. And so trying to put myself in situations and settings where there are people I can look around and just say, like, I don't need you to, necessarily coach me. I just
Mhm.
want to be able to watch what you do and be, proximity and presence and have those things nearby so I can look at a guy. There was one guy who, um, he never said like, I'm here to mentor you, but he was very intentional in my life for a season and never said like, do it like I do. But I watched him and said, man, I learned so much from that guy just because I watched how he prayed and said, man, I want to pray like that guy, and saw ways he interacted with his kids who were a season ahead of my kids, and was like, huh, that's I
Mhm.
can I can do that with my kids, when they get a couple years older. And so just looking for ways to imitate other people. And so creating a culture where that's possible, which I think all those things are a lot harder said than done. But
Mm.
so yeah, imitation is a huge thing for me.
Yeah, I like that idea of creating a culture. We talk a lot about in impact players that, authenticity breeds authenticity. If you as the leader can model authenticity with other men, then they're more likely to be authentic themselves. And I think humility is another part of that. And so like for me, I'm 49 years old. I'm not a kid anymore, but I still got a lot to learn. And so for me, like I have spiritual fathers in my life, and I think it's important for me to communicate to guys in their 30s and 40s that I need to have spiritual fathers, and that gives me a little bit more credibility to encourage and challenge them to look for spiritual fathers in their own lives as well, because it's not like I've got it all figured out now that I'm 49, you know. And so, I think for me, like I'm always telling guys, every man needs a Paul, every man needs a Timothy, and every man needs a Barnabas in his life. And I've got to model that if I'm going to challenge other men towards that same goal. Chris, what are your insights on the process of becoming a spiritual father, or inviting other men to spiritually father you?
My challenge, my interactions with young men, mostly high schoolers and maybe college age, has always been sports. I'm a
Mhm.
coach, so I'm involved in coaching young men, but I get them for a season, right? So at the high school level, you'll get kids for 3, 4 months. But if you're not working at the high school, which I haven't been, then my impact is limited to that season.
Mhm.
And so I've had good interactions and had opportunities with young men, but it's been for a limited time. So I kind of wanted to throw the question out to the group, which is, how do you find opportunities for longer than a season? I mean, we had some examples of, family relationships and so on, but does anybody have a structured way, maybe associated with a ministry or with a church, where you can get young men, maybe high schoolers, maybe older, in for longer than 3, 4 months?
Mhm.
Because that's been my restriction is, guys move on. High school guys, they move on to a different sport or a different activity, and I don't really have much of an opportunity after that season.
Yeah, guys, I think the Chris just asked really probably what is the most pivotal question, for today, which is really like, okay, men need spiritual fathers and men need spiritual sons. Um, they all kind of want it, but like it's not happening. So, what can we do to help facilitate it, to cultivate it for guys? How would you guys answer, Chris, in terms of, maybe moving beyond just the here for a season to like, hey, I want to be really intentional to build a longer term relationship with some of these guys?
That's a tough question there. I know locally, and every high school ministry is different, but the way our church operates is when you start with that, and you start with them in sixth grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, the goal is that that leader stays with throughout their whole journey. So again, that goes approaching the local church. Again, not all of them are fatherless, but even there, you're still a spiritual father, even though regardless of what their because it's a different perspective, not their father, right? So that's been what my wife and I did that for many seasons. Start with a group in ninth grade, finish in 12th grade, and man, that bond was solidified forever.
Mm.
And that was very helpful for my son. I mean, I was a spiritual father to my son, at least try to be a good one. But he had a mentor in high school at a youth group for 2, 3 years. And now he ironically is working for that same person. He moved away, Then he came back to the area. My son's in ministry now, music ministry, and he's actually working for that same guy. So it worked out
Mm,
perfectly. But that doesn't happen very, very often, right? There's turnover in churches. Um, some kids are kind of on the fringes. They'll come to an event, but they don't necessarily want to commit, or they're just busy. I mean, kids, you got a Wednesday night ministry or Sunday night ministry, kids can't come. They've got something else going on. So it sounds like the theme I'm hearing is you've got to have time. You've got to have consistent time with these kids. And I know it's a tough question, but I'm wondering if anybody has ideas or has found a way to get some continuity with kids who are maybe kind of on the periphery. They're there sometimes, they're not there sometimes, because frankly, those are the kids that you really need to reach, right? Those are the kids that really need it, and they know they need it, but they're busy or they're just uncommitted. So I don't want to ask the impossible question, but
no, it's a good question.
it's a
And
challenging question.
I do want to reframe a little bit to say, like, when we talk about spiritual fathering, it could be a teenager, or it could be a young man in his 20s, or even a guy in his 30s or early 40s. So, just as a clarification point, like what we're talking about today is not solely, kind of a youth ministry type of perspective, but that may be what your calling is. And if it is, praise God. I mean, I was a youth pastor for 17 years, so that's near and dear to my heart. But how much anybody else might have, how much you answer that question?
Couple observations. Yeah, and I've seen the same kind of thing with young adults, and I work with 18 to 25
Mm,
is that age bracket, and they're doing the exact same thing. Um, and what I've done with the guys, and I leave the ladies, my wife talks to, I talk to the guys. We keep that
mhm,
separate there. Um, is, hey, I've not seen you in a while. If it's okay with you, I'm going to keep reaching out to you until you tell me no. And I've got guys that I text them, every other month, just say, hey man, hope this is going well. Saw this, thought it was cool. If there's anything to do, just some kind of touch point to that person. Several of them have never responded to me, but they've never said, no, don't contact me.
mm,
They've given me that permission there. And on some level, they know they need that.
mhm.
They want that, whether or not they're willing to take that step. Occasionally, somebody will show up out of the blue at my house because,
Mhm.
dude, I think it was, I don't know if it was Kevin or Gary, that dinners, feed them and they will come.
Yeah,
And they will just show up whether they RSVP or not, and they will eat everything,
yeah.
that's fine. That's what you needed. You needed physical and spiritual nutrition there.
Mm,
But also to flip it around on us is we're only one part of God's plan. And I have to trust that since we are so transactional, it might be somebody that's working with me now here might end up moving and going to college in Seattle and connecting with Warren
mm,
in one of his groups. And I'll never know. I just know I did my part. I'm doing my part. Warren's doing his part. You're doing your part.
yeah.
And God's got all those connections. That kind of frees me up to just do what I'm doing and not worry about the results of somebody else's life. So
So good. Yeah, and I love that earlier you talked about kind of a relentless pursuit of guys. I think that probably to me is the number one thing is, someone's got to be the initiative maker or the initiator. And, I think we just try to keep telling men that if you want to be an impact player, you've got to be someone who takes initiative. Um, don't wait for someone else to make the first move. Take that first step, pick up the phone, call a guy, say, hey, I want you to be my spiritual father. Pick up a young man, say, hey, let's go grab some coffee. I want to spend time with you. Quit waiting for someone else to set it up for you or ask you. Be the initiator. Um, So I'm curious, like, one of the things that's again, I mentioned I was a youth pastor for a long time, and one of the things that has been great about the local church, but also has had a negative side effect, is the silo approach to ministry in the local church. So, you look at your local church and you've got children's ministry, youth ministry, men's ministry, women's ministry. All of those things are great. I'm not opposed to any of those. But one of the challenges is that we don't have a lot of intergenerational opportunities for young men and older men to just be in relationship with one another. So I'm curious, like, what you guys think about, how do you facilitate some of those intergenerational connection points that might, be the necessary stepping stones to helping men, feel like, hey, like, I really want to spend time with this Tom guy or this Gary guy because I feel like he's got something he can teach me.
Well, I think my experience is like the point of ministry that I'm at is I'm actually trying to father coach basically fathers. So I'm trying to help them with because it's a little bit of a guilt or shame that like they haven't figured it out on their own. And so or they haven't had the opportunity or never really thought about it. They just kind of wing it and they just repeat what their dads did for them or non-dad. And so trying to create those opportunities where like with impact is more just like kind of help coaching guys how they're doing as a father so that they have an opportunity to go like this is the way I've been doing it. I don't know if this is working, there's that aspect and in the church aspect I'm trying to do like just a fatherhood like quick study to try and gather young dads that go, hey, I'm trying to figure this out, but inviting the older because I've had a lot of older guys go like I'd love to talk to young guys too. It's like, well, okay, here's our opportunity where we can all be in the same room and we can start talking and sharing, like so then they realize like, oh, these guys actually care about me. They're this guy that resonated with me. I'm gonna maybe see if I can grab coffee with him later, type of thing. So just kind of creating those opportunities.
It's really good. So we've got about 5 minutes left. Let's just get into some real specific. How do you spiritually father younger men? Like, do you have a program? Do you have a book? Is there a regular routine that you go through? Or is it just purely kind of a relational, organic type of approach to spiritual fathering?
In my experiences, programs aren't as effective. I mean, you can, to answer even your previous question, you can get a bunch of men together intergenerationally and say, let's do something. And I just, my experience in the local church has not seen much fruit born out of that. You have to teach men. I mean, the word that came to mind a minute ago was passivity. Like men are just by nature passive. We see that with Adam in the garden, and we have to train and equip men that, hey, you got to pick up the phone and ask people and, just find that guy that you interact with wherever and say, hey, let's deepen this relationship. I mean, this is something I've had to learn myself to do, like to put yourself out there and say, I want this, and not just assume that, the older man is going to come to you, but you to reach out. And women are just by nature or more naturally inclined to do those types of things. So I think there has to be that just organic intentionality of both older men pursuing younger men, but also younger men saying, hey, don't just be content with hanging out with guys in your 20s the whole time. Like look for guys in your 30s or 40s who, if you don't have kids, like look for men who do have kids to learn from them. If you have young kids, look for men who have teenagers. If you're a dad with teenagers, look for men who have just, I mean, I'm interacting with a guy right now who's just sent his youngest just went off to college. And so he's dealing with what it looks like to be an empty nester for the first time. And he's saying it's been a very hard transition. And like, it's been very helpful for me, who's not gonna have to go through that myself for another 10 or 12 years, but like knowing like, oh man, like I'm just not something I've had to consider yet. And so it's been super helpful for me to to learn from this guy who's experiencing it now. Like you just need to put yourself in, I used that word a minute ago, in proximity to people who are a step ahead of you to learn from them and see what kind of things they're facing, because you're going to have to face a lot of those things yourself. And I mean, I'm sure there's books out there that, go through some of these things, but I just think that life on life nature of community and relationship is so essential. And most men are, again, more passive to not pursue those things the way that, they should. If they're, walking with Jesus and pursuing life in the spirit, that those things are just should be natural byproducts of the Christian life.
Yeah, that hits home, Scott. I think there's thousands of young men today who are looking to Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson and even guys like Mark Driscoll. And, they're saying like, this is my spiritual father. Like, this is the guy that I look to try to figure out what it means to be a man, what it means to be a husband, a dad, a leader, a Christian. And I love what you just said about proximity and life on life. And I think we need to be telling young men and all men that there is a significant difference between being spiritually fathered by a media personality or a cultural personality and being spiritually fathered by someone that you can actually know and have a relationship with. And I think we need to tell men that over and over and over again, that it's okay to have some like cultural heroes, but those are not your spiritual fathers. Your spiritual fathers are the guys that you can pick up the phone and call and meet and have, physical engagement with. And that's what we see in Paul, right? That like Paul was like, watch my life and do the way of Christ the way that I'm doing it. And if you do that, you're gonna be okay. Any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
I'll jump in with a quick thought. It's been on my mind a lot recently is to build a relationship, it takes good communication. And so I came across this thing, maybe you've heard of, but 7% of communication is the words we use, 38% tone of voice, and 55% body language. And so I've used that kind of in my own life with my kids, my marriage, and then, of course, going out to other men and friends is like, there's a deception a lot of the world has that because they text each other that they communicated. However, that's not how it works. I mean, we need to get together by a campfire, and we need to get together for lunch, and we need to see really in each other's eyes on, no, sir, friend, brother, son, mentor, mentee, how are you really doing? And here's how I'm really doing. And so I just encourage myself, the men that I work with, get together. If you can't get together, do a Zoom or a FaceTime, do a video text instead of just a text, do a video text, because you say, hey brother, I love you, I'm thinking about you, how you doing today, you're awesome, God's got a purpose for you today, have a good day. And you send that is so much stronger and meaningful to especially a young man that doesn't yet feel like he even has a purpose, and he's 15 hours a day looking at electronic devices being told what the purpose, the meaning of success is, and he's getting blinded by these Andrew Tate guys and everybody else that's totally incorrect and wrong and false sense of success. But when he actually connects with another man in person at a campfire, a hike or a fishing trip or anything like that, those are the men I remember in my life was the ones that I just had outdoor time with in person. But it goes back to how we connect. And if we can't get together in person, I think just utilizing those options so we can feel more in a relationship with each other. I know I wouldn't be married if all I did was text my wife. So I know that's not communication.
That's a great word. Well, guys, as we wrap this up, thank you so much for being a part of the conversation today. If you haven't checked them out, go check out Man in the Mirror's resources on spiritual fathering. I think it's a great starting point, and they even have some specific training that you can do on that. Man in the Mirror, great organization. And we will end our recording now, but I hope you guys will be back next month as we cover another men's ministry topic together.